Let's talk. I asked her before how much time she needed. She told me 40 minutes. Are we going to hang in with her till about 20 after? Amen. God bless.
I've tried to make this sermon shorter. I just don't know what to cut out. It is so good. And it's not because of me, it's because of God and His Word. I just love His Word. You know, I was thinking as Bev was introducing me and all those things, and she just wore me out introducing me. I thought, man, how can one person do so much stuff? And I thought, you know, the one thing I would really want you to know about me is that I just love God. And I just love His Word. And I think His Word is alive. Is this the microphone I'm using? I'll just put this one on. It's green. Can I use the lapel? Yes? Because I don't like to stand still. There we go. Anyway, I think God's Word is alive, and it is so relevant for our lives today. I mean, how many times have you studied and you read a story that you knew, and all of a sudden, pow, God just hit you with something that you'd never seen before? Isn't that amazing? And these words that were written 2,000 years ago, and you go, wow, this is relevant to my life right now. And that's what I hope you walk away with today. This weekend, we're talking about grace. What is grace? Beverly asked the children that. What is grace? And as I've shared this particular message with churches across Pennsylvania, I asked that question, what is grace? If you had to define it using non-church words, do you know what I'm saying? Words that the average person out on the street could understand, and you had to explain grace, how would you do it? What is grace? A gift from God. Okay? Does that really define grace? How would you define it? What else would you say about it? Unmerited favor. Every single church gives me that response. How many of you have used the word unmerited this week in talking with people outside of church? Anybody use that word? Unmerited. What does that mean? How do we define? One of the ways that Jesus explained things to people so that they would understand. And here's what I want you to do. We're going to talk about grace today. I want to count and see how many times I said the word grace. And if you digitally all the numbers are within about 20 or 30 of each other. Who is Peter? They were blue-collar labor. They smelled. Or their father? Probably not. Next morning, how do you think a fisherman, are there any fishermen in our congregation to go out fishing? Fishing, they catch the fish, they throw them all right back in. But not for Peter. They got out through the night, and the next morning they call you. I caught him, and he was this big. Some guy. You don't know on the shore tells you to put your nets back in. Come and follow me. I will make you fishers who've been dead for 4 days. That was significant. That was different than focus. On Peter's little faith of going down under the bread and the wine. They don't know the significance of it yet because what blue collar One of them was a tax collector. They were hated and abhorred. Turned to me. Strengthen your brethren. And let's unpack that a little bit. Job. Isn't he a pretty cool guy? And the enemy physically. Okay, have at it. The battle for grace. Once you choose grace, no, because if he had faith in himself, it's going to really back. When you come back to me, because I know you're going to, because I'm praying for you. What does Peter say? Or to go to prison for him in his head. Yes. Yes, we would go with you to death or to prison. Father. Is key for the battle. and steal from me. Around him, the disciples saw what was going to happen. They soared. And one, which, because if I wanted most high priest, do you think he likes the disciples? Ew. And the high priest gets angry and says, "I'll for him too." Too. They might be, what does he notice? He's got two, didn't just walk, they leapt for joy. He has to throw it out. We have failed and sinned, can't he? Peter is confused, and I'm brought him into the high priest's house, but Peter followed this fire. There are only 2 times in the Gospels where he's dressed like one of the disciples. He's dressed like he does. While he was speaking, the 3rd time, while he was still, this is a cross. Across the courtyard. It's early that he denied him, but he looks at Jesus and denied. That he even know him. And Jesus is that the look that Jesus is giving Peter? But instead, and leaves. It says, verse 60, his eyes and you'll remember how he felt. Blew it. Of how when Jesus needed it the most, look how you blew it. And like he just wasn't very good at this disciple thing. Died and risen. From the dead. The disciples have seen him, but Peter verse 3. God. And it is those moments of vulnerability that make a thing I good. At. That's something that will pay the bills. I know how to do it into the boat. Immediately. They didn't stop to think. They didn't pass out on the boat. That night, these disciples gathered around in this boat. They remember the time that we crossed the lake and we got to the other side, and remember that demon that interrupted our journey to Jairus' home? The day is beginning to break. They've caught nothing, right? That's what the enemy whispers in his head. You can't say, what we want, and then we say, but, and here's the truth. Jesus stood on the shore, and we not. Hey, wait. The right side. The boat, and you'll find some. So they cast, and now they were not able to the net with. With a fish. So about 6 or 7 disciples are dragging this. Do you think that this is any coincidence? Said to them. Bring some of the fish which you have just caught. breakfast. Does that strike you as strange? And fix breakfasts for his friends. Times is Jesus asked the question, Peter, do you love me? God orchestrated all of it. I think the cola, wake up and think of grace. Think of that coal of fire and think of Jesus around. You see, no matter what you've done or where you've been or what you're going to do tomorrow, God helps or service. You may be really good at math and finances and can help people. Sometimes the enemy is going to come and he's going to want to convince you that you're not enough and that you can't. That's what grace looks like. It's not dependent on anything about us. It's totally dependent on him. It's not about what we do right or what we do wrong. It's about what he has done and about how we accept it or not. We have a choice like Peter. Peter could now take this moment and he could say, you know, Jesus, I'd like to follow you. But I just don't have it in me. I'm just not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I failed you. I'm going to fail you again. or Peter can follow Jesus. 2 years ago, I met a young lady. Her name was Shiloh. She was in her early 20s. She had been born into a home with an abusive father, verbally. And physically abusive. He told her she was worth nothing and rescued. Her and brought her home to their house. Her mom swimming was what she enjoyed doing, and one of the local high schools needed a swim. And her parents wanted to help her out, so they bought her a car and put insurance. A little time. Her Facebook message story. One night, they had gone out and had a great time. The next morning, she texted him and told him that one of her friends had been in an accident and wanted her to come to the hospital. She was in bad shape. And so she was driving north a couple of hours to go to the hospital to be with her friend. She'd probably be back in town around 9:30, and when she got in town, she would call or text him. That evening, no calls or texts came. By morning, he was frantic. She didn't return phone calls or text messages, nothing. Then his phone rang, and it was her mother. "Have you heard from Shiloh? What did she tell you? She never came home." He said, "Well, this is what she said. Her friend was in an accident." So Mom called the friend. There'd been no accident. Mom knew where to call. I've been involved in women's ministries for more than 2 decades now. As he told me the story, I knew the ending of the story. She had gone back. They say it takes 7 times to rescue a woman from abuse before she stays out. That was just the first time for Shiloh. And she went back. And he has destroyed her cell phone. He forced her off of Facebook so she had no contact with anybody else. The young man that she had been dating got the phone number of this other guy and called and insisted that Shiloh be put on the phone. He would later tell me that she was just sobbing and sobbing and didn't sound like the Shiloh that he knew. And in the background, this young man was yelling and screaming and belittling her the entire time. You don't deserve anything more than this. You see, Shiloh didn't choose grace. She had the opportunity to choose a new life and choose grace, and she chose to go back and allow an enemy to destroy her. Now, you and I may not live with somebody who is verbally or physically abusing us, but we have an enemy who is attacking us in our heads and our thinking all the time, trying to keep us from being who God created us to be, and we have a choice of who to believe. Do we agree with the enemy and live under what he says and who he says we are? Or do we choose grace? And we choose to believe what God says. Peter chose grace. Peter chose Jesus. And the Bible goes on to tell his story. And it says that he turned the world upside down. It says that people saw him and were amazed at his teaching. That they thought, wow, who is this uneducated man who has been with Jesus? Today, you and I have a choice to make. Do we choose grace? Do we choose to live lives gracefully, full of grace? Do we deny what the enemy says about who we are and what we've done and listen to what God says about us? Your choice. Mark's going to lead us in a closing song, and I pray that the words would be a prayer as you think about the choice that each of us has to make.